Let's make my Opulence Patchwork Pattern, which uses 5-inch squares, also known as charm packs. Now I am using Garden of Opulence by Art Gallery Fabrics. Now Art Gallery Fabrics doesn't make charm packs, but I ended up taking a layer cake and cutting it into quarters to create my own charm packs. But either way, for this pattern, you will only need 27 5-inch squares and a half a yard for your sashing and border. But feel free to use leftover scraps since this pattern will become very scrappy in the end. But moving forward, with your 5-inch squares, you are going to select 12 5-inch squares and cut them into 2.5-inch squares. You will yield 4 2.5-inch squares per each 5-inch squares. Afterwards, you will then take the remaining 15 5-inch squares and trim them down to a 4.5-inch square. Once everything is cut, you are going to select 4 2.5-inch squares in mixed prints to form a 4 patch. Now you will sew your squares into rows, followed by sewing your rows together to complete a 4 patch measuring as a 4.5-inch square. You'll then repeat this step until you have made a total of 12 4-patch blocks. Once all of your 4 patches are complete, you will take 4 of them, as well as 5 4.5-inch squares, and lay them like so to form your block. You will sew your blocks together into rows, and then lastly, your rows together to complete a 12.5-inch quilt block. Now all you'll have to do is repeat this step until you have made a total of 3 quilt blocks. Once all of your blocks are completed, you will then take your yardage and cut it down into 3.5-inch strips. Now to avoid less waste, I recommend cutting 6 3.5-inch by 12.5-inch strips and place them on the top and bottom of your blocks. Then sash in between each row with the remaining 3.5-inch strips. Doing your border and sashing like so can help save on fabric as long as your fabric for your sashing doesn't have a large salvage edge. Now since I am using a solid, there is more length available within the width of the fabric, but as always, you'll just sew everything together to complete your table runner. And here is what my table runner looks like all completed. For the backing, I am using a coordinating print from within the collection. And for the thread choice, I am going to step out of my usual comfort and go with something oddly different as I'm going to use glide threads in the color Fog. And here is what my table runner looks like all complete. Your table runner will finish as 18 inches by 48 inches long. And for the quilting, I went with one of my own digital patterns, which I will link down below in the description. But if you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.